Hey, wow, VIPers, and welcome to another edition of Thirsty Thursday, a very special edition. We love to bring guests on this because I know you get sick of seeing me all the time. You get tired of looking at this mug, even though I've got my hair cut now and I don't have the viral do that I had in several of the previous episodes. So it's great to be with you, clean cut, or at least more clean cut. But we've got a real special event for you this evening. We've got a special guest who has some great expertise. As I've told you before on this page, there's a lot of stuff I don't know. And I'm very, very quick to jump out and grab experts in things that I really don't have an expertise in. And it's wonderful to be able to have access to folks. And tonight we have Stephanie Kolb with us, who is a very special person for us, because not only is she an expert in nutrition, but she is our expert in nutrition. She works and partners with us on our weight management program and does all the nutritional counseling and has become an expert in virtual nutritional counseling because she lives in a far off country called Texas. Are you still in Texas, Stephanie?
I am in Texas now, yes.
Okay, all right. Well, she's in that separate country known as Texas. But it really I like to say we kind of were doing telemedicine before telemedicine was cool.
That's very
We've
true.
been doing this now for a couple of years, and it really has illustrated how well this can really deliver the quality that we want. So we knew telemedicine was something to be reckoned with, and it's just now the rest of the world is coming along. But welcome, Stephanie. We're glad you're here with us. Take just a second and tell everybody a little bit about yourself, just so they have some context.
Yeah, absolutely. So like Dr. Eager said, I'm in Texas, but born and raised actually in California, and that's where I got my nutrition degree and my love for nutrition. So moved out here about 4 years ago, and been working with Dr. Eager for about 2 years, but nutrition in general, been in the field for almost 15, specifically doing medical nutrition and medical weight loss. So that's my niche that I have found and love. And I love seeing the impact that it has on patients' health and, overall progress, and really seeing their health and transformation become important to them. So I love what I do. I've been doing it for a while, and very happy to be here.
Yeah, and one funny piece about Stephanie, and she, for the first while that we worked with her, she was living in the Virgin Islands.
Yep.
And you talk about making some people mad when she would counsel them with these palm trees waving in the back and the beaches, the waves crashing on the beach, and we're sitting here in Augusta. So she has since relocated back home to Texas. So that's, again, the beauty of the telemedicine. We appreciate you being with us. It's amazing, and I knew this was the case, but it's amazing the response that we got about a week ago when I put out the call on our Facebook page to let us know about any particular questions you might have. Yeah. And what I found was there were a remarkable similarity in the questions. People would express it a little differently, but the context was often the same. So I went through and culled out as many as I could, and we're going to really address as many as we can in this 30-45 minute time frame. Yeah. And there was a lot that overlapped, so I kind of consolidated some of those questions. Okay. And we're going to use those as a jumping off point. People know on this Facebook page I have a habit of going off on tangents, so we may find something that's fun that I want to go in rabbit hole. So okay, well, I reserve the right to go on a tangent.
Okay, all right. Well, vice versa.
Good deal. Well, I think one of the most topical and important questions that people had right now is their struggle with how to eat appropriately and avoid the pitfalls while they're in the shelter-in-place scenario. We don't know. This is the 1st of June, the first week in June. We don't really know how much longer things are going to be this way. We know that for particularly high-risk individuals, and simply by age, there's a lot of people on our Facebook page who are in that age group. They're still being asked to shelter in place. So we've got a lot of folks who are out of their habits and out of their patterns of eating or shopping. what's your thoughts on maybe some tips or tricks for people who are in a home environment a lot more than they're used to for staying healthy nutritionally?
Yeah, great question. I have a few suggestions for that. So the one seems obvious, but you have to have healthy foods available. So I know that sounds like a no-brainer, but believe it or not, that comes up a lot of, well, I didn't have anything else to eat, so I ate this. So definitely number one is make it a priority when you do get to the grocery store that you do buy the healthy options. Number two is get rid of, most of your tempting foods that you do have in the house that you have a hard time either limiting the portions or just not part of, your health goals. And that may not be the case for everybody, especially if you have husbands or kids in the house that you can't, completely get rid of everything. And I personally understand that as well. So with that, what I would suggest is have a safe place for you where, either in the fridge that you have your separate, space for your foods that go in the fridge or your pantry. So when you go to get a snack or making a meal, when you open up the pantry, you don't necessarily always see those foods that you are trying to avoid. So number one, make sure you have them. Number two, create that safe space for you. A few other things that I can think about is you want to make those healthy foods just as convenient as the unhealthy ones. So a lot of the times, if we do get hungry, we want, that quick, easy, convenient option. And if you have to assemble something, it can deter you from eating healthy. So making sure that your healthy options are just as healthy or just as convenient as maybe those grab and go unhealthy options. Pre-cutting vegetables or wrapping up some deli meats and cheese and having those, like I said, just kind of grab and go. No assembly required.
I love that idea because so much of this is based on practicality and convenience. And when people say things are simple and common sense, generally that's where your ears need to perk up because they wouldn't get to that category if they didn't work. So just because something is simple and common sense doesn't mean it's not something that's really valuable. And I love that suggestion. I even tell folks with the bad stuff is literally put physical barriers between them.
Yeah.
Put them up on a top shelf. Make it hard to get to. Even something that simple can make a difference. You touched a little bit on something I think that's really important, and that's the concept of healthy snacks. A lot of times we don't think of snacking in terms of something that could actually be healthy and filling. Give us, you mentioned a couple of things. Any other suggestions that you tell folks about as far as just healthy snacks that they could have readily available?
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you are any of my patients watching this video, you know that I harp all the time on every meal and snack having some sort of protein. So I think protein really should be the foundation of most of our meals and snacks. So really grab and go proteins. We have string cheese, cottage cheese, Greek yogurt, even, chicken salad, hard-boiled eggs. Those are kind of your quick, easy go-to snack options that are protein. And then, you can build from those proteins with adding in small amounts of fruit or, of course, vegetables. Can't go wrong there. But yeah, I'm a stapler for protein. So as long as you have the foundation of protein, good.
Yeah, and protein is really helpful from the standpoint of satiety because, of course, it stays in the stomach longer, takes more to digest it time-wise. So that's what creates its ability to keep you from getting that hunger sensation, which then what sometimes will drive that future. And we're actually seeing that to digest proteins in many cases actually burns more calories. People don't realize there's a thing called a thermogenic effect of food because the different food you eat is metabolized differently. Now, it doesn't, granted, compose a large portion of your energy drain through the day, but it could be significant. So every little bit helps. So not only does the protein keep you more full, but it actually burns more calories to metabolize. So there's a lot of benefits in that. And I think like anything else, I think the real take home there is make the healthy snacks, think ahead. Think ahead, pre-plan, so you're not caught off guard when that hunger strikes. And then make them as simple and as readily available as possible. Make the bad stuff hard to get, make the good stuff easy to get. And it's amazing that one little change.
Right.
Let me ask you about something that was brought up the other day that I had not really thought about until
Mm-hmm.
this patient brought it up.
Okay.
And, you know, we think a lot about the preparation phase and having stuff available, but specifically as it relates to COVID, she was talking about how her interaction in the grocery store has dramatically changed what she's shopping for. She was talking about, one, she wants to get in there and get out as quick as possible. So
Right.
she's not reading labels. She's kind of grabbing things quickly. And it had not occurred to me that really may be an issue. Have you heard anything like that as far as the actual acquisition of food and how that's different, and maybe how you could change that during this time frame?
Right. Yeah. No, I have heard that a little bit. That and people gravitating more towards shelf-stable foods and stuff like that. Now, granted, that was kind of more in the beginning when things were a little bit more unpredictable. But I think, yeah, definitely going into the store with a plan, it always helps. You know, if you need to wing it, you know, you may again just grab what's convenient, or not take the time to look at the ingredients. So see if your grocery stores have the option to do online shopping, where all you have to do is go pick it up, and that way it eliminates any in the moment decisions. It's something that you actually have to think about and plan for. But definitely going in with the list, I think helps, and not being in a rush, and taking the time to still read labels. And if that's something that you don't feel comfortable doing right now, then yeah, do it in the comfort of your own home. Most of the grocery stores nowadays have most of their options available online.
Yeah, that's an excellent. That's one of the advantages that has developed with this COVID, is the ability to. I think people are much more comfortable now putting an order in online and just picking it up, and it does give you that control. It does give you that sense of, I can make these choices. In fact, we actually on our website for our weight management group have a suggested shopping list that people could use as a template.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of gets into this idea that I think is very important, and I know it's something you embrace, and that's being proactive and doing meal prep. Mm-hmm. And planning ahead. What do you ever run across, or I'm sure you do run across, certain common issues that, well, first of all, why don't you explain what meal prep is and what role that plays in not just weight loss, but just nutrition in general?
Yeah. Good question. And I think meal planning, you can go many different ways with it. Some of the drawbacks to meal planning is, most people don't want to take the time to plan out their meals, on a weekly basis. And I absolutely understand that. I myself don't go that far. But even just meal planning for your day, I think has significant impacts, not only, with, like you said, if you're consistent with that with weight loss, but overall health, because if you are planning out your foods, you're more likely to adhere to those healthy options, and again, not be as tempted by, maybe something that walks by in the office or something that your husband's eating. So I think just having a plan for the day of what you're going to eat is way more impactful if you don't feel like meal planning, specific meals days in advance.
Yeah, it's kind of a way of easing into it, where you can start out by saying, okay, I'm gonna plan Monday on Sunday afternoon, or instead of trying to think, oh, I've got to put together 12 meals on this Sunday. Start slow and take baby steps and build up.
Yeah.
But I think what that allows you to do, and one of the things that we suggest to folks who catch themselves in scenarios where they are forced to make poor choices just because of the environment, if they're in a work setting and they only have vending machines, or they don't have time enough to get somewhere, if they've thought ahead proactively and done the meal prep, and it doesn't have to be anything complicated. And we're not talking about, gourmet meals for these things. It can be as simple as, putting together some type of healthy casserole that will last for 2 or 3 days for lunches, and there's 100 different resources for those kind of things. So there's not a lack of information as much as just kind of a lack of understanding of the value that can be. How many times do you find yourself, and I'm talking to our WOW folks, how many times do you find yourself in situations where you really don't have options that you want to have. And we all do, whether it's at home or work or whatever scenario we find ourselves in. So that the more you can think through and pre-plan and anticipate those situations, that's where also sometimes in our weight program we'll use bars and shakes. In fact, let's talk. We had a couple of questions on meal substitutes,
Yeah.
and that kind of leads into that. And because I've worked with you, I know kind of how you feel about those and how they're utilized. There's a lot on the market now. There's a lot. You can walk into any store and see shelf after shelf of protein, what's called protein bars.
Right.
Give me your thoughts on the meal substitutes and how to differentiate maybe a good one from a glorified candy bar, which some of them are.
Right, absolutely. So, bars are really not my favorite when it comes to going low carb, just because even the best ones still have their drawbacks. So generally for bars, what I suggest is if you have to have them because you have no other options and you're trying to be proactive and have something healthy, definitely use that more as a backup plan, not necessarily a planned go-to. It's I had to run an extra errand. I'm not going to be home for a few hours. At least I had this in my car and I didn't have to go through drive-through or, something else. So I think with bars, I prefer people, again, the whole planning thing is maybe have that as your plan B and your plan A is real whole food. Just because the bars, they are like you said, kind of glorified candy bars. They all have carbs in it. There's really no way to get around having a bar without carbs.
Yeah, and that I think that's true. I use most of the time where I use that is in travel. If I'm traveling and I know that either I'm going to be on a plane or I'm going to be in a car for a period of time, the last thing I want to get caught doing is going through a drive-through somewhere. That's one of my ground rules is this: if you get your food without ever having to leave the car, it's probably not the best stuff for you. So
That's a good
plan ahead. Plan
Yeah.
ahead. That's ECR maxim number one. If you're in the car and you get food, probably not a good choice.
Yeah.
Well, what you said kind of started me thinking, and it really fed into probably one of the biggest questions that we got in multiple forms and repetitively, and that's kind of about macros and about protein, carbs, and fats.
Yeah.
We've gone through such an evolution, and probably even in the time frame that you've been involved in nutrition, there's been a evolution. I know certainly I've got shoes older than you, so I've been through several of these evolutions where we, growing up in medical school, even it was low fat's the way to go. I mean, that's the healthiest approach, and we could spend hours on the history of why that came about. But now I think the general consensus is that a lower carbohydrate approach is really very good for weight management. But what we're also seeing is even in people who are at a reasonably normal weight who just want to remain healthy, the two kind of caveats that I see is continue with a low carb intake and also be careful of total calorie intake. I think when you talk about calorie restriction, and that's based on a normal consumption, that's based on the normal U.S. consumption, which is way more than it should be for the average person anyway. But a little bit of calorie restriction along with the low carb. So tell me kind of what the nutritionists' take on macros are right now, and you could divide that up, whether it's specifically as it relates to weight loss or specifically as it relates to just general health and wellness, or maybe both. Just feel free to expound on that.
Perfect. Yeah. So specifically of the macronutrients, carbs, like you said, the huge evolution from having a high amount of carbs in your diet to now, the switch being more prone to want low carbs. And even when I was in college, they were still teaching high carb, low fat, even for diabetics, which we know now is a big no-no. So yeah, so I think overall health and weight loss, they kind of go hand in hand. And so traditionally when you do have a diet that's high in carbs, you're going to see a lot more kind of comorbidities with that: diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, etc. So bringing down your carbohydrate intake usually will impact those hugely in a positive way. So not only weight loss, but also, you know, with the diseases that are associated with high carbs. And twofold, going to the other macronutrient now, protein. That's where you kind of have the perfect success is you're bringing down your carbohydrate intake at the same time bumping up your protein. So I know you touched on this a little bit, but protein is a dieter's best friend because, like you said, it takes a lot to digest that. You're burning calories digesting it, staying in your stomach for a longer period of time, so you are getting that feeling of fullness longer. And it does a better job of controlling blood sugar. So anybody who does have insulin resistance or is a diabetic, you will see better blood sugar control by having less carbs and more protein in your diet.
Yeah, and I think just to even take it back one step, I know sometimes when we talk, of course, you know, we have a certain knowledge base, and I think a lot of folks are a lot more educated on protein, carbs, and fats.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of throw those terms out there like we assume everybody knows exactly examples of what they are. Just take a minute and look at each one of those categories and just throw out some common examples. I think especially there's some confusion in the world of carbs as a because everybody says, well, eat your fruits and vegetables. Well, fruits and vegetables are carbs.
Right.
So this sets up this confusion, I think, in people's minds. So if you can kind of navigate that a little bit and explain maybe the difference between, I don't like using the term good carbs and bad carbs.
No,
different carbs. So give us a little breakdown and a little nutrition 101 in that respect.
Yeah, sure. So carbs, there is a huge umbrella of what foods fall under this category. So you have your traditional, which most people associate with carbs, or, you know, your breads, your pastas, your rice, your beans, kind of more of your starchier foods. You also have most of your snack foods, so your chips, your crackers, your pretzels. But yes, even fruits and vegetables technically are carbohydrates. So generally, when you do go low carb, you bring down everything. You bring down the good, you bring down the bad, you bring down the ugly. All of your carbs you want to decrease. So that is a debate that I get in a lot with people, especially with the fruits. Is, you know, fruits are good, but like you said, not labeling things good or bad, looking at them for what they are. Fruits are 100% carbohydrates. So not to say that they are bad for you, but in a low carb diet and trying to bring that down, you definitely have to limit your fruit intake.
Yeah, what I usually like to kind of the thing that I tell folks is that generally look for fruits that you're going to eat with the peel still on them, just because it gives you all that fiber, and that fiber helps reduce the absorption of the fructose, which is the fruit sugar that creates some of the issues in the liver for people. So, you know, you hear the high fructose corn syrup and all the problems associated with that, although quite honestly, you can't compare fruits and fructose and high fructose corn syrup. Those are two different entities. And that does confuse people sometimes.
They share one word that's similar.
Exactly, and that's about it. And that's about it. And I differentiate that easily by saying, well, you know, you eat an apple with the peel on it, you're going to get that fiber. It's going to bind and help prevent some of that fructose from getting in and raising your blood sugar rapidly, as opposed to a banana, where you peel the fiber off, you peel the skin off, and you eat that unless you eat the skin on the banana, and then you've got other problems. You know, we won't go into the other issues, the counseling that would need to be involved in someone eating a peel on a banana. But it just illustrates kind of how the nuances in looking at some of these foods. And sometimes it is a bit confusing to someone who doesn't have a background. And that's why, quite honestly, that's why I think someone like yourself, who is trained specifically in nutrition, is so valuable. And in fact, it's absolutely critical in a program like we do on weight management, because here's the dirty little secret. Most doctors know nothing about nutrition. And I know you've probably run across that in your career.
Oh yeah.
Because, I mean, literally in medical school, now this was 30 years ago, it's gotten better, but in medical school, in 4 years, we had 2 weeks of nutrition. And that boggles my mind now as we understand the incredible impact that nutrition has on health and wellness. It was completely missed in that educational process. So any physician, and I can say this almost across the board unless they're actually in the nutrition field, but almost any physician, if they know anything about nutrition, it's because they've learned it on their own.
Correct.
It's not because they were taught it. So I think there is, if you were going to your doctor, other than me, of course, going to your doctor, you probably, and again, this is a generalization, so no nasty emails, especially from your doctors that are in the group. In general, they're not going to spend a lot of time talking to you about nutrition, not because they don't think it's important, but it's something that they really haven't focused on themselves.
Right.
And so that's why working with people like Stephanie who have that expertise, I think is so important, whether it's in a weight loss program or just in a wellness program, and someone who's wanting to maintain their health.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that's just something that we've seen across the board. So you believe me, I defer when a patient comes in and Stephanie told me this, my first response is just like it is to my wife. Yep, she's right. That's why I'm still married. You know, I've understood, I know the proper response. And so that's exactly the way I do it, because, you know, you want to defer to the experts. Along those lines, we also got a lot of questions about tips and tricks to kind of stay full. The term we use is satiety that we use in medicine but that's one of the issues that people oftentimes have, whether it stems from cravings or, you know, when you change the diet, whether you're lowering the calorie intake, sometimes that's the trigger that keeps people from really the success that they want. So give me some thoughts about feeling full, feeling satiated, and maybe some tips or tricks that you've come across that help that.
Yeah. So my first one is counterintuitive, but eat before you get hungry. So most people, they go through the day and maybe all day without eating, and then they decide to think about food once they're hungry. And so literally when we are hungry, we need a larger volume of food to shut that hunger off. And you're kind of chasing your hunger. You never quite feel satisfied if you're always waiting until you get hungry to eat. Also, that's also more associated with cravings. So if you're always, you know, skipping meals and going too long between your meals, you're going to experience more cravings. So counterintuitive, but my number one tip for staying full is to eat before you get hungry. You will find that it's easier for you to manage those decisions when you're not eating out of hunger. You know, you're not going to be as tempted to eat this versus this. You'll be able to eat what you planned or what is a healthy option, and you will be satisfied with less. It's hard to envision, but once, and I have my patients tell me this all the time, I never thought that would have worked, but I absolutely am more satisfied. I don't have hunger. I don't have cravings just from eating kind of more regular and eating before you get hungry.
Yeah, and there are two factors that you have to take into consideration with the cravings. One is just the physiology, what we feel, the stomach growling, just that. Yeah. And then the second part is just the psychology of it.
Right.
And I think oftentimes we have so relegated our eating habits to society norms as opposed to really physiology.
Yeah.
That sometimes there's a mismatch between the hunger signals, the fact that the clock says a certain time and I know I'm supposed to eat at a certain time. So there really is kind of an art to try to balance, though, that physiology and the psychology, because either one can create problems for people who are trying to be smart about their nutrition. And I think that's a very good tip, and that's something that you could just take that one thing from here, and it would be valuable for you in trying to abate both the physiological and the psychological
One helps
issues.
the other.
Yeah. Another common question we got, and I wanted to get your impression, and then I'll chime in a little bit about hormones, which is kind of my area of expertise. But there was a lot of questions about differences in age and how that could either impact weight loss, or one question was, as I'm getting older, should I eat differently than 10 years ago? Or what role does age play in how a nutritionist would counsel somebody who's 60 versus somebody who's 30? So
right.
Tell me your thoughts along those lines.
Yeah, absolutely. So generally, as we age, hormones definitely play a factor in that. And, you have to work that much harder just to earn every pound that you do lose. So it is an unfortunate thing, but, some things that we can do is try to keep our muscle, if not build muscle, so that we are burning more calories throughout the day. So I think, a lot of the time as we do age, we naturally lose muscle, and we know that muscle burns calories. So if we have less, then, we're burning less calories throughout the day. So one, having that protein as you're losing weight can help offset any diet-related muscle loss. But definitely staying active, burning calories. And I get if you can't get to the gym or don't have the will to go to a gym for, an hour, 2 hours a day, which, I understand not everyone wants to do that. Find every opportunity that you can just to be active. Take the stairs, park further away, stand up for your desk. They all sound like simple things, but, most of the time we really don't take the time to do them. And if we did, it may have, some offset to the age-related weight gain that we do experience. Resistance training, you don't have to be in a gym to do weights to get some resistance training. Our bodies are great resistance. So, wall squats, lunges, wall push-ups, resistance bands. So those are some ways that we can burn some extra calories since our metabolism does slow down as we age.
Yeah, I think that's a really important understanding that people miss a lot. In fact, I had a discussion with a patient today about, she was so frustrated, and this is common, she's so frustrated, she's doing exactly the same thing nutritionally and activity-wise that she's done for the past 20 years, but she's 54, 55, and she's noticed in the last 2 or 3 years that every year she'll put on 3, 4, 5 pounds. And really the explanation is physiology, her basic metabolic rate, the amount of energy required to run her system. If you literally woke up in the morning and laid flat out on the bed and didn't move, that's 70% of your energy expenditure, just running your heart, your liver, your lungs. And we know as you age, that number goes down. So it takes less, just imagine your car gets more efficient and it takes less gas to go the same length of time or the length of mileage. So that's a given. There's no way to really get around that physiology. So if you do exactly the same thing, then you are going to put on weight because you're storing that extra energy that your body doesn't really need. So you have to counterbalance that either by accelerating the activity that you're doing or cutting down on the intake. So there is that tweak that occurs with age. And then, of course, with women, there's no question that there are shifts that happen in menopause with no hormones are very metabolically active. And, for example, in the menopause, oftentimes you'll see not a big increase in testosterone, which is produced by the ovaries. We tend to think of that as the male hormone, but it is produced by the ovaries. But what happens in menopause, because there's such a big drop in estrogen, the relative amount of testosterone is increased. The body thinks there's more there because there's less of these balancing things. And testosterone tends to create a lot of increased fat around the midsection. So that's why a lot of women, as they get in the 50s and 60s, will start to see a little bit of that, what the old commercial they used to talk about, midriff bulge. I love that term, midriff bulge. For folks who are older than my age and older, there used to be I think it was maybe a pantyhose commercial or something that says, get rid of that midriff bulge. And I just always wondered what that was until I finally figured out that's that abdominal stuff in the middle that goes with age.
Yeah.
And that there's some things that you can do to help offset that. There's a bit of a myth that women have that going through menopause creates weight gain. Well, the reality is it's more age than it is the hormones. And there's some things we can do with hormones, but that's not primarily why I would utilize hormones. If weight is the major issue for someone in that age group, we're going a lot different places than just hormones. And I imagine
we're going on our plan.
yes, we're doing something much differently. Anything, we're getting close to our time here, and I want to respect your time. Anything that, if you could just think of one thing you could recommend to someone nutritionally, and I know that's putting you on the spot, and that's like asking you to drink from a fire hydrant, asking a nutritionist to think of one thing, and that'd be like me saying one thing for women's health that you could suggest. But just if you could think of one thing to leave our folks with that would be something that would be practical from the nutrition standpoint that would have a positive impact on their health, what would that be?
Oh, that is tough. That one is throwing me off. I don't think that there's one specific food, that's going to make or break your health, or one specific exercise that's going to make or break your health. I think a lot of it starts in our mind, and if our minds are right, then it's going to be easier for you to follow a healthy plan or a weight loss plan or stick to something. So as cheesy as this may be, and I know it's not necessarily one nutrition thing, but it's finding the balance, with everything. You can't be on a diet 100% of the time. You have to have a balance in there. Otherwise, you're black and white and you go right back. So I think that's true with a lot of things, is just find the balance and don't be so black and white about things.
I really like that because I think that applies to not just nutrition, but life in general. The old Greek ideal of nothing in excess, everything in moderation. It's an old Greek ideal because it made a lot of sense for the last 2,500 years.
Yeah.
And I think that's good advice nutritionally. We live in a world that's certainly polarized politically, but we're also almost as polarized as we are nutritionally. And it's very easy to lose our perspective sometimes and understand that eating balanced, eating a variety of whole foods, eating things, like you said, there's no one just really bad. Well, Twinkies is probably just really bad food. But other than Twinkies, there's not any one really bad food, and there's not really one magic food. No matter what Facebook ads or late night TV tell you, there's not really one superfood either. So I think that's very, very solid advice, and I think in a way it helps reduce some of the anxiety that people have when it comes to food and nutrition.
Yeah.
I think a lot of stagnation comes and frustration comes from getting what seems to be contradictory information.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think understanding that there's not one thing that's really going to disrupt a diet. If you go off the wagon one day, well, the only problem is just get back on it. That's the only failure. It's not because you blew it at a party one night and had too many cheesy poofs. It's just getting back on the direction the next day, and that goes back to that idea of balance.
Yeah, it starts in the mind. I always say that one salad's not going to translate to weight loss, just like one oops meal or one high carb meal is not going to lead to weight gain. It's really what you do before and what you do after that has more of the impact on your health. So absolutely not one thing, not one day is going to make it or break it.
Perfect. I think that's great advice to end on. Well, guys, if you are struggling with your weight and if you're having issues specifically as it relates to health and wellness, regarding weight, that we do have our women's wellness weight management program out of our office. And now you've got a real introduction to somebody that you'd work with intimately for 12 weeks. In our first 12 weeks of our program, you meet with Stephanie and get a chance to pick her brain and use her expertise and rely on the advice that she has given to literally hundreds of folks, if not thousands, over the years.
Oh, yeah.
And not only based in science, but based in results. So if this is an interest of you, give our office a call. You can go on our website and let us reach out to you, and we can tell you a little bit more about the program as it specifically applies to you. Listen, wow, folks, thank y'all for being a part of Thirsty Thursdays like always. And remember, make healthy choices. We'll see you next time.